Hello and welcome to the Corporate Risk Systems Induction for the Level 5 NVQ Diploma in Occupational Health and Safety Practice, certified by City & Guilds. My name is Richard Ball and I'm one of the Internal Quality Assessors for Corporate Risk Systems. The aim of this session is to give you an overview of the qualification, looking at what is a vocational qualification, what the structure of the qualification is, what can be classed as evidence and what should go in your reflective report, what is the assessment process, and how we can get you started on your new qualification. The City & Guilds Level 5 NVQ Diploma in Occupational Health and Safety Practice is designed for you to be able to demonstrate that you are the complete health and safety practitioner. In the qualification, you will put together a management report and supporting evidence in a range of areas, including reviewing health and safety culture for an organisation, developing and implementing a health and safety policy, implementing effective communication systems, both internally and external to the organisation, developing and maintaining competence and training within an organisation, assessing, identifying and controlling health and safety risks to an organisation, implementing proactive monitoring systems, developing reactive monitoring systems such as accident investigation, implementing emergency response systems, developing health and safety review systems, and maintaining your own knowledge in health and safety practice. The idea of the qualification is that you will take the opportunity to demonstrate your competence in each of these areas through a management report and specific evidence where you have completed a range of tasks. Your assessor will guide you through each stage and unit to ensure that you complete the qualification. So what do we mean by a vocational qualification? A vocational qualification is a qualification with no exams or assessments. The learner demonstrates his competence or her competence through the generation of work-based products. This is supported by a reflective management report which highlights their thoughts and activities on how they went about the activity and how they generated the materials. This is based on the concept of learning by doing, which has been shown to increase retention rates and also supports the individual within the workplace to demonstrate their skills. An often used example is the photographer's simile. Consider that you wanted to use a photographer for a family wedding or for a portrait. The best example of his work or her work would not be a qualification. It would be by reviewing their pictures and images that they have created. They may be wedding photos from other individuals, sports photography, black and white photos, landscapes or other portraits. They would put together the portfolio of evidence to show their skill set in using the camera in a range of light conditions and situations. You may use this portfolio to consider however the style, the ability and the competency of the photographer meets the needs for what you require. Similarly, a vocational qualification in health and safety follows the similar sort of standard, where you will produce risk assessments, accident investigations and health and safety policies to demonstrate your competence in being a health and safety professional. It should be noticed that this qualification is a Level 5 qualification. Levels 1 and 2 focus on broad ranges of skills and abilities. Levels 3 and Level 4 focus more on managerial activities. The Level 5 highlights a professional senior level qualification, and the evidence that you produce, the quality of the reflective report, should be to the standards as would be expected when putting a professional report together for a workplace for presentation to the senior management team. The course is based on individual mentored learning. This means that you will be assigned an individual assessor to be able to support you through the qualification process. This is supported by the Learning Assistance Programme put together by City and Girls. For each of the units, you will be given a range of standards and statements that we will look at later on in this presentation. The idea is that for each statement you need to demonstrate through 2 pieces of evidence that you can competently meet the requirements of that assessment criteria. The advantage of this process is that it is tailored to your individual style and pace within the confines of the qualification. You will get information based on one-to-one guidance for your personal needs and skills and your workplace. It is based on very competence-based evidence. For example, in Unit 504, you will need to develop a workplace inspection and monitoring system. Here, you will look at times when you have developed workplace inspections and provide evidence for it. This will be supported by a reflective report for each unit, where you explain why you went about that particular activity, how you went about it, and the key learning that you took from it. This would then be uploaded to the Learning Assistance Programme together with the evidence for that particular unit. Your assessor would then review this evidence to see whether or not it sufficiently meets the criteria, or give you one-to-one support on what more you can do to meet the specified standard. Okay, so let's look at the qualification in more detail. The qualification is made up of 10 different units. With each unit there is a subunit, and within each subunit there are a range of assessment criteria. Let's have a look at Unit 501. 501 is about the promotion of a positive health and safety culture. Within 501 there are 3 subunits. The first of these is to be able to advocate the commitment to a positive health and safety culture within an organisation. For this first subunit, there are 5 separate assessment criteria. The first of these is to provide sufficient and clear information to people in the organisation about the benefits of a positive health and safety culture. For each assessment criteria, as a candidate, you must provide evidence as to your competency in this area. So, for the assessment criteria we have here, we may consider about writing a report to senior management, or providing evidence of an induction training session where we highlight the benefits to the organisation of complying with health and safety requirements for personal reasons and financial and legal benefits. Within the qualification, you will put together evidence for all of the different assessment criteria. Each assessment criteria will be covered twice. Your assessor will give you information feeding back against each assessment criteria to see whether you have achieved the standard or whether more needs to be done in order to to demonstrate your competence. Now that we understand a little of the structure of the qualification in terms of units, subunits and assessment criteria, we can look at the breadth of the qualification. The qualification is made up of 10 mandatory units. These must be completed by all delegates completing the qualification. They can be completed in any order, but we would recommend the following structure provides a route through a typical health and safety system. 501 starts with promoting a positive health and safety culture. From here you would develop a health and safety policy. Following this, we would recommend you look at communication systems in and out of the organisation. This would be followed by developing and maintaining individual and organisational competence in health and safety matters. Unit 503 then looks at identifying, assessing and controlling health and safety risks. We would then move on to developing inspection programs in proactive monitoring systems for health and safety. This would be followed by reactive systems in terms of accident investigation and data management. From here we would look at implementing health and safety emergency response systems, moving on to review, and finally looking at how you've maintained your continual professional development in improving and influencing health and safety practice. Unit 501, as previously mentioned, is then broken into 3 key subunits. The first of these is to be able to advocate a positive health and safety culture. The second is develop appropriate links with groups and people on health and safety matters. And the final unit in every unit is about demonstrating your understanding. And here it is to understand the importance of promoting a positive health and safety culture within your organisation. If we then look at the assessment criteria for Unit 501, there are 5 key areas. The first of these is to provide sufficient and clear information to the people about the positive benefits of a health and safety culture. The second is to obtain support from those individuals, including directors and employee representatives. Then we need to use opportunities to communicate information, to create new opportunities, and finally to demonstrate that you can investigate ways to overcome barriers to change. The City and Guilds Learning Assistance Programme has a reference programme with all of these units clearly spelt out for you, so you can upload your documents to this and then cross-reference which documents you can use as evidence to each individual assessment criteria. So you've heard all about the qualification. Hopefully you are enthused and encouraged to make a start. But where to begin? The first stage is to upload your basic information onto Learning Assistant. The document with the link at the end of this presentation will highlight to you how you begin and to upload your information onto the system, and then you can provide information in the first unit with things such as your CV, health and safety qualifications, organisation and information and job description, or information about the sector that you would like to work in. By providing this, we can then assign you an assessor best aligned to your needs and expectations. Following this, the next stage is to review your current evidence and the standards for which you want to tackle. As previously highlighted, we recommend starting with understanding the health and safety culture of your organisation. In the first unit, we've provided you with a self-assessment so you can have a look at how you can obtain that evidence and then how you identify areas where you need to do more work. For example, you may not have delivered training, or you may not have been involved in an accident investigation. It makes sense right at the start of the qualification to start to plan how we can meet the needs to gather the evidence for later. Once you have reviewed, the next section is to research. This will involve looking into each of the standards, each of the assessment criteria, to identify how you meet that criteria and researching areas where you haven't already gained evidence. Quite often delegates will have done part of the qualification but not others, and it is through learning that you will be able to apply it to your workplace, providing yourself with work products and evidence for the qualification, and improving your organisation's health and safety systems. The final part is to write your reflective report. We'll have a look at this in a bit more detail on the next slide, but this pulls together all of the information on your knowledge and understanding, and also how you went about creating the evidence and creating the work-based products. Once you have done this, you will upload all of this information onto the learning assistant process, and then it will be assessed by your assigned assessor, who will give you feedback as to whether you meet the standard or whether you need to do some additional work to be able to meet the requirements of that sub-unit. Now we've identified where to begin. The next stage is to consider what can be cast as evidence. In essence, evidence should be your work, your thoughts, and evidence of your application within a workplace. The work-based evidence could be examples of audits you have completed, management reports you have presented to management, presentations such as induction training or presentations within safety committees, evidence of communication with internal and external bodies through emails and reports, or you could consider witness statements. Further information on witness statements can be found in the Getting Started guide, which is on the link at the end of this presentation. Your assessor can give you information as to what can be considered and what can't be considered as evidence. Another part of evidence is the actual reflective report. This is evidence of you explaining how you've developed your evidence. We will look at this within the next few slides. So what can't be considered as evidence? Essentially, anything that is not your work. We do not need copies of health and safety executive documents or company reports that you have not produced. If you have reviewed the legislation and put annotated notes on it, this is acceptable because it is showing your work and your interpretation of that requirement. What do assessors look for in your evidence? Essentially, this can be broken down into 4 key areas. First of all, that the evidence is valid for the actual assessment criteria for which it is being presented. The first of these is that the evidence actually relates to the required standard. If it relates specifically to identifying hazards and controls, then it must cover this particular topic. The second part is that it should be authentic, that it should be the candidate's own work and not that of others. It is therefore important that where you have done work in conjunction with somebody else, or there is not clear evidence on the piece of work that it is your work because it is named, then you should put in your reflective report what your contribution to it was. The work should also be current. Where evidence is older than 2 years, this should be supported with evidence of how you have kept yourself competent. If you produced a legal register in 1978, then clearly that wouldn't demonstrate that you are up to date with the latest legislation. Finally, the quantity and quality of the evidence must meet that which the competence of the assessor believes for this standard. As highlighted previously, this is a level 5 qualification. A simple risk assessment of an office may not be sufficient to demonstrate your full range and breadth of for this level of qualification. Your assessor can give you more information in relation to this. Finally, we need to look at the reflective report. This is the document that pulls together all of your evidence and all of your knowledge. It should outline how and why you produced the evidence and an explanation of the underpinning academic concepts linking to the knowledge and understanding requirements. Within the report, you should talk in the first person of how you did a particular activity and then link it in more detail to the broader concepts. It should include a statement that verifies that this is your own work unless otherwise referenced, and these references should be clearly signpost the verifier and the assessor to where you got that information from. Book titles, websites should all be listed within a bibliography reference towards the end of the document. So what is the assessment process? The first point to start from is yourself. Have a look back at the evidence and the reflective report and to see whether this meets the assessment criteria. Have a look to see whether you feel the evidence appropriately covers all of the areas required and the reflective report accurately highlights your involvement in it. Should you need additional support with this, your assessor is there to guide you through the Learning Assistance Programme. When you have obtained all of the evidence, the next step is to upload it onto the Learning Assistance Programme, cross-checking and ticking where you feel as if the evidence meets each of the performance criteria. Once you have pressed the submit button, your assessor will review this evidence against the performance criteria. If he feels as if or she feels as if the evidence meets the requirements of the unit, then you will get a return to say that the evidence has been accepted. You can then move on to the next unit, looking at the feedback that has been given that might give you guidance on how to improve future units. Should the evidence not meet the requirements of the unit, then you are given direct feedback relating to which assessment criteria you have completed and which ones you need to do more work on. At this point, you can speak to your guided support assessor, who will give you information as to what further information may be required to achieve the Level 5 standard. Following this, you would resubmit your evidence and the assessor would then review the resubmission in accordance with the assessment criteria as before. In addition to this process, internal and external quality assessors will verify a sample of the candidate's work. The exact assessment process is based upon a formative process, which is assessed through the course of the qualification, and a summative process where the final submission is reviewed prior to completion. The main focus here is to ensure the quality of the standard of the assessment decisions that are made throughout the centre. Hopefully, in this presentation, we have given you an introduction into the NVQ Level 5 Diploma in Occupational Health and Safety Practice. The next step is to click on the Get Started button, and that will take you to a link on a document to give you more information about the Learning Assistance Programme, for which you should have already received your login. On the following two pages are our appeals and equality and diversity policy for your information. I hope that this has given you a good start to the qualification and that you will work productively with your assessor to complete the qualification and to progress to become the complete health and safety professional.